Well, here we are, three of us around the table, having just finished recording the novel of Samuel Richardson, Clarissa, The History of a Young Lady. And this is, as we all are now aware, one of the longest, and I'm sure we all agree, one of the best classic books in English. And I hope all feel privileged to have done it for Naxos Audiobooks. So I'm Garrick Hagon, who co-directed it with
Liza Ross, the co-director.
And I'm Lucy Scott. I played Clarissa.
And Lucy, I just wondered, you were my first only choice.
Oh, I hope so.
I just wondered, had you read the book before?
I was aware of it, but goodness me, I think I'd have found it too intimidating, just looking at the sheer scale of it.
I know, you pick it up and you think, no.
No, there's no way.
Again.
And in fact, I did speak to somebody who studied it, and she said, I wish that I'd had an audio version of this, because when I first came across it, I found it so intimidating. Just the size of it, the print is so small. I mean, once recorded, it's probably about 100 hours.
About that. I reckon about 95 hours.
But once you get over that, just the scale of it, the language is so accessible. It's made to be an audio. Because I know that Samuel Richardson's wife and her friends really enjoyed reading it to each other.
Aloud.
Yes. And were desperate to know more. I think he actually published the whole novel in 8 volumes.
We might as well say that he published it in about 1748, maybe over the year, or maybe 1747 to 1748.
But some of the letters, actually you're right, are almost in play form.
Absolutely.
With different characters talking. So you're in fact listening to a play.
Yeah.
With especially Lovelace's, a lot of Lovelace's letters.
There's some wonderful comic scenes that I just adore, and I wish I'd seen them on stage. It's like a restoration play.
It really is.
I mean, we're talking well on in the novel, but that scene around the deathbed of Mrs. Sinclair in the brothel, just incredible. But yes, he is. He's got all this wonderful dramatic sense.
"Sally, Polly, Sister Carter," said she, "did you not tell me I might recover? Did not the surgeon tell me I might?" "And so you may," cried Sally. "Monsieur Garron says you may, if you'll be patient. But as I have often told you this blessed morning, you are readier to take despair from your own fears than comfort from all the hope we can give you." "Yet," cried the wretch, interrupting, "does not Mr. Belford, and to him you have told the truth, though you won't to me, does not he tell me that I shall die? I cannot bear it. I cannot bear the thoughts of dying." And then, but that 6 at once endeavoured to keep down her violent hands, would she have beaten herself, as it seems she had often attempted to do from the time the surgeon popped out the word mortification to her.
Or the scene with the lady who pretends to be Clarissa, and she's all bundled up because she's ill, so she's all wrapped up in shawls. This poor servant can't see her face.
And when Lovelace goes into the shop, Mrs. Smith's shop, and becomes the shopkeeper and starts selling gloves and things. No, it's a terrific sense of the personalities of each of these writers. There are 4 main writers, aren't there? There are 4 main correspondents and then their friends around them. And the insight he has into the mindsets of Clarissa herself, her lively and sharp friend Anna, and the men, it's just incredible because he sort of adapts the language of the letters to fit these characters and they become alive. And the other thing about the structure, which you're talking about, the letters, is that they're written almost immediately something has happened. As soon as an event or a conflict has taken place, they're back in their rooms writing. It gives us a sense of being there with them in their boudoir.
It's currently happening. What has just occurred is now being recorded.
Yeah. It makes the excitement of the novel incredibly...
Yes, palpable, doesn't it? Yes, really current.
It's a wide variety of characters too, isn't it?
But the wonderful thing about Clarissa is that, unlike Pamela, his earlier heroine, who's almost too good to be true, Clarissa does have a few little faults. She's not a good judge of character, and she doesn't obey her mother when she says, don't communicate with this man anymore. And even Anna Howe is suspicious of him. So she's much more likable, I think, because she isn't absolutely perfect.
I think it's very difficult to judge somebody who's a young woman. She's 18. She's the youngest of the three siblings. She's been brought up in this environment to be dutiful, and in fact, they all love her because she is.
Yes.
And she's been given, well, her inheritance is going to be extraordinary as a result. But I think this comes naturally to her, and she speaks, sometimes she's over dutiful, and it can harm her. But she can speak great sense as well, where she talks about Anna Howe, her best friend, her treatment of Hickman, who is engaged to her. Now, Hickman is a very soft, gentle character, and Anna sometimes abuses his love for her. And she upholds her on this. She upbraids her, because she says, I think there's a situation when a lot of Anna Howe's family are meeting Mr. Hickman for the first time, and Anna Howe puts him down in front of her family. And Clarissa puts it so beautifully. The treatment of Hickman is appalling, she thinks. And so she's quite moral about how you should behave to somebody, and she speaks huge sense. Another line or two before I am engrossed by my own concerns upon your treatment of Mr. Hickman. Is it, do you think, generous to revenge upon an innocent person the displeasure you receive from another quarter, where, I doubt, you are a trespasser too? But one thing I could tell him, and you have best not provoke me to it, it is this, that no woman uses ill the man she does not absolutely reject, but she has it in her heart to make him amends when her tyranny has had its run and he has completed the measure of his services and patience. My mind is not enough at ease to push this matter further.
They're both very clever in an age in which it wasn't perhaps the best thing for women to be clever.
Clarissa is constantly saying she's not.
She's the intellectual superior of Hickman, and that is why she puts him down.
She puts him down.
But in the end, of course, we perhaps shouldn't say what happens in the end, but she does put him down, but that's it, because her brain is so sharp, she's way ahead of him.
Yes.
Well, it's the same with the contrast between Lovelace and Belford, because Belford being the very moral one, and in the end virtually converted to adoration of Clarissa, and Lovelace being the complete opposite. But the incredible thing about those two guys, it's a very macho relationship, because they're always kind of one-upping, or at least Lovelace is always one-upping his friends, and the friends in his gang of rakes, if you like. He's always considering himself or trying to get to the top of the pile.
Well, they were a group of rakes. You have to accept that Belford originally was in the group and also was going after women in that way. They're sort of like, it was thought before, it's almost like a profession for a well-to-do sort of man to be a rake. They were bored, so it gave them something to do. And Don Giovanni is another example, isn't it, from more or less the same time, or the rake's progress, and he, of course, comes to a very bad end.
And Clarissa's opinion of the libertine is that they spend so much time focusing on their external that they never actually focus on, what's important and, emotion, your own personal.
Richardson wanted the book to have this kind of moral import.
But he gave Lovelace so much charm.
I know he did.
So, of course...
and that's what they love.
The lovable rogue.
Yes, it's great to read about him, but to actually live with that person would be a nightmare.
Did you find, I don't know, Liza and I both spent an awful lot of time kind of getting used to the language itself, to the words, to the phrases, marking phrases, so that when the actors found it difficult to understand or to read out loud, we would be prepared in a way to add assistance. But did you do a lot of marking when you prepared, Lucy?
I found it was surprisingly easy to read it because it is so beautifully written. There are so many... The sentences are incredibly long, so that's intimidating. But once you're into the flow of the character and the way they're reading it, it's such a smooth read, and it really does trip off the tongue. Yes, it was surprisingly easy. I had a little bit about Clarissa describing Lovelace. So I thought maybe if I just...
Yes.
Again, it's really perceptive about why she knows that marrying a libertine would be an absolute disaster for her. Obviously, she enters into the marriage, into a potential marriage, thinking she could change him. Anyway, this is Clarissa talking about Lovelace. I once indeed hoped, little thinking him so premeditatedly vile a man, that I might have the happiness to reclaim him. I vainly believed that he loved me well enough to suffer my advice for his good, and the example I humbly presumed I should be enabled to set him, to have weight with him, and the rather as he had no mean opinion of my morals and understanding. But now what hope is there left for this my prime hope? Were I to marry him, what a figure should I make, preaching virtue and morality to a man whom I had trusted with opportunities to seduce me from all my own duties? And then, supposing I were to have children by such a husband, must it not, think you, cut a thoughtful person to the heart to look around upon her little family and think she had given them a father destined, without a miracle, to perdition, and whose immoralities, propagated among them by his vile example, might, too probably, bring down a curse upon them? And after all, who knows but that my own sinful compliances with a man who might think himself entitled to my obedience might taint my own morals and make me, instead of a reformer, an imitator of him? For who can touch pitch and not be defiled?
That's the phrase you wanted.
Yeah, that is the phrase.
Pitch.
And it's so unfortunate that she only comes to that realization a bit late.
Yes, this is very much.
She had realized that or thought it through, which someone like Anna Howe might have done.
Often during the course of the recording, which we did over about 11 weeks, I suppose, but during the course we often would say, isn't this so current?
Oh,
isn't
completely.
this so applicable to what we're hearing on the news today?
Yes.
Especially as people say, it can be abusive, this novel. It is abusive, because after all, Lovelace behaves extraordinarily badly.
That type of person still exists,
But
obvious from what we're hearing.
Unlike the tabloids, Richardson avoids the grim detail of the actual climax of the villainy. And he doesn't skirt around it because they talk about the event, but they don't.
I think that makes it even more powerful, actually.
It does. Just her reaction to the event, not the event itself.
Not the actual gruesome details of the event.
Yeah.
It's wonderful how he, just perhaps changing the subject a little bit, but how he develops character just from letters. And I'm thinking of the smaller parts as well. Some of them may only have 3 or 4 letters, like Arabella or James Hollow, but their character is immediately apparent, the way they write and the things and the way they express themselves. It's so clever of him.
And also the detail of the society that he brings in. Virtually everything on the road, the pubs, the tiring places. You get the lodging houses, how much they cost, where they're going to go, where they're going to live in London, the churches. You get such a wide variety of views of the society.
Yes. And where would be a good place in London to live and one less so. Yeah. Yeah,
we were talking about his friend Samuel Johnson. I just wanted to read you the one quotation that everybody knows, perhaps, that Samuel Johnson, having read it and loving the book, said it was simply the first book in the world for the knowledge it displays of the human heart. And that's what we get from it, isn't it? The kind of intimacy he has with these characters. I want to know what it meant to the reader, our main reader, Lucy, to come into the studio each day but not act with other actors.
A lot of the brilliant engineers from the RNIB would give me little flavours of the previous recordings so that I know who I would be speaking to. For example, Clarissa writes a lot to Anna Howe, so it was really helpful to have her voice in my head.
Yes, and so you and Katie Scarf only met at the party afterwards.
I think yes, pretty much. But I'm very delighted to know that she would have been a very good friend to Clarissa.
Well, this is the interesting thing about the casting, because Liza and I and Naxos all chose the readers that we kind of thought would understand and fulfill these main characters.
Well, 4 characters were doing just one character, but then there were 4 readers each one was doing several characters. So that was sort of challenging, but they all did it beautifully. I must say, they did do it beautifully.
And they work, as far as I can tell, and I hope, together on the finished product very well.
You were working from 3 scripts.
Yes, we were just checking because there's so many editions of this. And we had to make sure that what we were doing was what we considered the best.
The best, yeah.
Uh-huh. There were choices to be made all through. Richardson himself wanted to ameliorate some of the more violent and sadistic parts, I think. He did try and revise, but generally not to the better. I think it became duller when he did that. This amazing man who lived in Twickenham, was a businessman, had a family, and was writing by candlelight. And think, I mean, it's equivalent to Shakespeare.
It's
Dickens.
extraordinary.
And I just am so happy that we were all able to get together and do this.